The vast majority of adults hold a favorable view of themselves. This is necessary to keep a stable mental state, and it enables us to approach life with confidence and a proactive mindset. Naturally, a good balance is required for normal human functioning, as an overinflated self-view can lead to problems such as narcissism and lack of personal growth, while a negative self-view often results in depression or inability to perform. But what if an event comes along that clearly violates this positive view of the self? An event so damaging it could lead to mental collapse. In such cases, Sigmund Freud proposed that we have a set of psychological defense mechanisms that serve to protect the self against the damaging implications of those events. Although these mechanisms can prevent anxiety-inducing thoughts short-term, research has shown that over-reliance can lead to psychological difficulties. Freud never did construct a definitive list of defense mechanisms, but loads of other psychologists have continued his work, and amongst these, I've picked out 7 different mechanisms that we often see in human life. Denial is perhaps the simplest defense mechanism, as it involves a person refusing to accept objective facts and reality. Say an employee in a pencil manufacturing factory consistently receives negative feedback about their work quality. Because this feedback clearly violates their own perceived positive view of themselves, they simply refuse to accept the validity of this feedback, deeming it illegitimate, and the manager doesn't know what he's talking about anyway. The employee can simply deny the feedback and therefore the naturally accompanying negative thoughts. Reaction formation happens when a person converts a socially unacceptable impulse into its opposite reaction. Socially unacceptable of course implies that it varies depending on the context you find yourself in. But a list of common unacceptable urges include cheating, aggression, irresponsible behavior, and envy. A great example of this defense mechanism is when in-closet homosexual individuals go out of their way to publicly criticize anything associated with homosexuality, thereby hiding their true feelings. Another example could be a parent secretly hating parentship and their child, wishing for the single life and free life again, but hiding their feelings by being overprotective and showering their child with love out of pure guilt. So if you see someone overdoing something, it could be a sign of reaction formation in action. Projection. In its simplest form, projection involves seeing your own traits in other people. On a deeper level, projection is about attributing your own unwanted thoughts, feelings, and motives onto someone else. Your grandpa might have told you the age-old saying, "A thief thinks everyone steals," which is closely related to this mechanism. In a workplace context, an employee might feel inadequate about their own performance, and then start to criticize his colleagues, perceiving them to be just a shortcoming. Or a disorganized manager might miss key deadlines and blame their team for being disorganized and unproductive. One explanation for this mechanism could go like this. To be the only person who cheats on taxes or breaks the speed limit would imply that one is uniquely immoral, even evil. But if everyone else is likewise breaking those laws, one's own action can hardly be condemned with great force. Displacement. The fourth defense mechanism occurs when a person experiences some kind of emotional impulses from an object or a person and redirects that impulse onto another target. Say you're at work and your boss yells at you because your report was terrible and failed to please upper management. You yourself get angry, but because you really value your ice cream tasting job, you can't really do anything but bite the bullet. Later at your house, you're still pretty angry, so you decide to take it out on your wife and child, because they're safer and more neutral objects who probably couldn't give you the same consequences as your boss could. By redirecting your feelings onto a different but safer target, you soothe your negative emotions. This has been a classic trope in many movies, where the viewer comes to the realization that middle school bullies often bully their companions because their dad lost their job at the ice cream factory. Repression involves subconsciously blocking out unpleasant emotions and thoughts, and can happen both as a singular event or as a continuous process over time. The most classic example is going through a traumatic event during childhood and unconsciously repressing said event, thus having no memory of it later in your life. As a continuous process, this can occur when an employee who is stressed out and unhappy represses those negative emotions, convincing themselves that they're content. This kind of repression isn't quite harmless though, as it can easily lead to burnout at a later point. Regression. Although one letter away from repression, regression is a whole nother thing altogether, as it occurs when a person is faced with a situation so bad that they revert back to an earlier stage of development. Say you're an adulty adult. Top-level management has just put you under a tremendous amount of pressure by requiring you to complete 50 hours of work in 30 hours after a long period of stress. Instead of committing yourself to the actual work, you instead regress to your preteen years and constantly ask your supervisor for guidance while acting helpless, even though you'd usually be able to handle the given tasks. The last defense mechanism in this video is intellectualization, which involves a person focusing on the intellectual aspects of a situation in order to avoid dealing with the emotional consequences. Say you're a healthy average person in your mid-20s. You return from a mini vacation with friends, looking forward to spending the rest of the day with your girlfriend. When you enter the door, you see all her packed bags while she's standing in the apartment with a teary look. Now, instead of dealing with the grief by watching poorly made rom-coms and microwave popcorn, you instead start to read up on psychological theory, including but not limited to the stages of grief, defense mechanisms, and rituals surrounding depression. By acting the rational way, this allows you to distance yourself from concomitant emotions and thereby avoid the anxiety or distress that the situation has caused. So, defense mechanisms are actually a very normal part of psychological functioning and can be adaptive and helpful when used in moderation. They help individuals cope with stress, conflict, and unwanted thoughts or feelings. But when overused or relied upon excessively, they can lead to really unhealthy patterns or difficulties in personal growth. Understanding and recognizing these mechanisms can be an important step in self-awareness and emotional health, no matter if it's at the bridge club, the workplace, or simply at home.